Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our webinar series. We've got a very exciting webinar for you today. I'm Katie Watson, and I'll be your host on behalf of Secon. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much for being here. And if you've joined us at one of our sessions before, welcome back. At Secon, we believe cybersecurity should be empowering and not overwhelming. We're a UK-based cybersecurity partner with over 25 years of helping organizations take back control of their digital environments. And we are very excited today to bring you this talk, which is delivered by Rubrik. Today's theme could not be more relevant. It's ransomware and how it has changed and how we can fight it. In today's session, we're going to show you how organizations can take back control when ransomware strikes, detecting threats early, stopping the spread, and recovering faster with AI-powered precision. And there is no one better to guide us through this than Andy Lawrie, who's EMEA Systems Engineer Manager at Rubrik. Andy is an expert in data protection, backups, and has extensive technical expertise. He has been involved in over 30 cyber attacks, which gives him great insights. And Andy is also joined by Adam Bouchlaghem from Rubrik as well, who will be giving us an insight into what Rubrik is. So before we go into their session, just a few little bits of housekeeping. This webinar is going to be recorded and the recording will be shared with you afterwards. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, so please do feel free to submit any questions at any time and that will go in the Q&A function. And if you do have a question and you forget to ask it, you can get in touch with us at any time and you can reach me with your questions via email at katie.watson@seconcyber.com. So without further ado, I will bring the men you came to see on screen, and I will leave it to them to explore what we're all here for, which is ransomware.
Thanks, Katie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time today. I just wanted to start by explaining why I feel this webinar is very important. The reality is the threats and the landscape is very complex at the moment for all the organizations that we speak to. You know, it's evolved from opportunistic attacks to sophisticated attacks now, and well-funded operations from the attacker side. They're patient. They look to steal privileged credentials. They look to move laterally into organizations' networks, and sometimes they do that for months. And when they strike, it's not just encrypting production data, which I would say is something which we've seen maybe in the last 5 years, but now they're targeting the backups, which is the next phase. And that's the safety net that we all rely on. So they exfiltrate the sensitive data. Sometimes it's double or even triple extortion attacks to maximize the pressure. And the tough part for a lot of you people on the call is that it doesn't matter how much really you've invested in prevention. All it really takes is for one employee to, click on a well-crafted phishing link, or a contractor, third party to be left active, and then, can even sometimes go into single unpatched SQL injection vulnerabilities, lots and lots of things. And also with the introduction of AI, those campaigns of scanning environments can be faster than ever. And in fact, if you look at artificial intelligence in particular, we've seen with the businesses that we speak to that's introducing a new level of risk. We're seeing employees, often they've got the right intentions. They are putting sensitive business critical information into these systems. So the crown jewels of your company into unsecured generative AI tools. And that data can be stored, it can be trained on, it can be accessed outside of your control. So it's almost, I would say, much worse than shadow IT, okay? Because it's invisible until it's too late. So if you look at the recent attacks that we've seen on the news, it's all about exploiting a trusted path, escalating privileges, exfiltrating data, and disrupting the operation. So in those moments, every single minute and every single hour matters of what you do. So you've got the executives on the bridge calls. We've seen it happen, and you can go into detail. And customers are waiting, regulators are asking for answers. And the only question that they have for you is, when are we going to go back online? So that's where Rubrik comes in. We don't just back up your data, we make it immutable, we make it verifiable and rapidly recovery. So even if attackers are inside of your environment, we give you the clean recovery points and the ability to store entire environments in hours as opposed to weeks. So that's reducing the chaos in the business, it's containing the damage and giving you that confidence that even in a worst case scenario, your business doesn't stop. So that's what we're going to show you today. My colleague Andy, one of our top technical experts here at Rubrik, he's going to show you thoroughly how Rubrik helps organizations like this prepare for the worst and recover at speed. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Katie. Yes, so I'm just going to share my screen, and I've got a couple of slides, I promise. That's all we've got. Let me just check, is that sharing now? Give it a second to come through it. Is that sharing now? Okay, let's say I can see it sharing. Perfect. So yeah, my name's Andy Lawrie. I'm head of the EMEA Solutions Consultants here at Rubrik, and we're going to go through how Rubrik is the last line of defence against a cyber attack, how we should be assuming breach and not be taking the cyber recovery as a kind of known issue. So let's talk about what happens in a breach. So in a breach, we know that bad actors are gaining access. Adam described several ways that they do gain access. We're not here to discuss how they are. We just know that they are gaining access. And from our investigations and from doing several bits of research, we know that an attacker is on average on your network between 5 and 9 days. Now, they're not just having fun on your network. They're building backdoor entries in, encrypted tunnels back into your environment in case you do find them. They're compromising your identity, creating new users, so that they're always looking for a path to get back in case you find them. They're also looking for what we call sensitive data. This is data that's going to cause you maximum reputational damage, potential class action lawsuits, and certainly regulator fines like the British Telecom Act or GDPR, etc., etc. Now, once they have this data, they are then going to try and find your backups. The backup servers are very easy to identify on the network, and they're going to try and encrypt these backups. And that's why the phrase immutable backups came out. We need to ensure that the backups are there for the event of this day that comes, that we have something to recover to. Once they've done that, they're going to launch a mass encryption event. This number is now up to about 70%, where they're going to launch the mass encryption event at the hypervisor level, because none of your SIEM and SOAR and XDR and EDR tools are scanning at that level. Traditionally, we saw mass encryptions events at file and folder. They're now going a level below and launching them at the hypervisor level. A lot more faster, undetectable, and they can wipe out full data centers in minutes. So there's 5 questions you need to ask to see if you have or can become cyber resilience. So, is my backups 100% immutable? And we don't just mean have we got a secondary storage or move the data up to the cloud. Do we have a local copy of the data that is 100% going to survive an attack? Meaning that none of our backup infrastructure has proxy servers running on production, the production storage, and we know and hand in heart can say, yep, these backups will survive the attack. They're local, and I can start recovering in the event of this mass encryption event. The next question to ask is, how do I know the blast radius of my attack? How do I know what has been encrypted? Because the thing that everybody does as soon as they have a cyber attack is shut down network connections. They become blind, their EDR tools being bypassed. They have no visibility into the actual blast radius of the attack, and they have no idea what needs to be recovered. And they have to assume they have to recover everything. The next question that needs to be asked is, what sensitive data was on the network at the time and was at risk from exfiltration? Because the bad actors will tell you every single time that they have your data and they're going to release it on the dark web unless you pay them some form of ransom. The next question is, how quickly can I find a clean recovery point and not risk being reinfected? Now, this is the key one that means on average that the average downtime from a cyber attack is up to 21 days. Recent attacks in the news have been a lot longer to recover. And the reason for that is the bad actor's here and he's deployed the payload at this point. And malware ransomware is just like a file, like any other file. Every backup solution, Rubrik included, will back it up. These blue lines indicate a backup. So we've bad actor enters here, deploys payload, but it doesn't detonate to here because the bad actor doesn't need to be on the network to detonate the payload. So the backup solution is backing up the malware and ransomware and putting it into the backup storage. And basically what we need to do is go through a process of rinse and repeating, recovering to an isolated recovery point. So taking each backup, each virtual machine, recovering to an isolated environment, using a third-party tool to scan that backup for malware and ransomware, known indicators of compromises, be it file hashes, YAYA rules, file patterns, etc. If we find malware, we have to throw that backup away, go back to the next point, rinse and repeat for every single machine on your network. And you have to do that over and over again until you find the clean recovery points. Now, on average, each scan will take you about 8 hours. If you have hundreds and thousands of machines, your downtime is going to be measured in months. You might be lucky to be actually weeks. So you need to be able to find this clean recovery point very quickly to avoid reinfection. And then, how long will it take? How do you test in peacetime so that you know that you can prove and you know that you have the ability to have a cyber resilience, being able to recover from that ransomware event without the risk of reinfection in a matter of hours? And obviously we'll demonstrate how Rubrik does it. Now let's start with the immutability part, because I can't really demonstrate that. Immutability doesn't mean one thing from Rubrik's point of view. So if we're talking about on-premise, we deploy a physical appliance that's a converged backup. It has its dedupe storage and it has this data vault on it as well. We do not deploy anything that runs in the hypervisors, so we are fully survivable from an attack. The number one operating system by about 70% that is attacked on a cyber attack is Microsoft Windows. So if your backup solution has any kind of Windows architecture in there, it's likely to be gone, probably will be gone in the event of an attack. Rubrik doesn't use just any off-the-shelf operating system. We take a version of Linux, harden it, removes things like root access, SSH access, all these things to make sure that we've got that zero trust model and making sure that the data is going to survive the attack. It can scale out to multiple petabytes in a fashion. Everything is end-to-end encrypted by default with a validated encryption key. You can even bring your own encryption key via key management server. And then everything is air-gapped. So the backup data gets written into Rubrik's own file system that is air-gapped from your network. We use no open storage protocols like NFS SMB. We use closed API calls to write the data to the Rubrik data vault. And then everything is immutable by design. From the first block of data that is written to Rubrik's file system, it cannot be modified, encrypted, and it's an append-only file system. The only way to remove data from Rubrik is through our retention policy, which is why we have things like mandatory MFA, and then we have break glass accounts for local users with time-based one-time passwords. And then we have this thing called retention lock, whereas when you go and set your SLA, so say you're backing up once an hour and you want to keep it for 30 days, you cannot then, on a bad actor, disgruntled employee, can't then go in and change that 1 hour and only keep it for 1 day, meaning all the backups would expire. And then we have this thing called NTP protection, which is we do not rely on any external source to tell us the date and the time of when that backup should expire. So we don't use any network time protocol services to tell us when that backup should expire. And then we have our scanners, which allows us to find those clean recovery points, to find the blast radius that I will demonstrate in just a second. So if I just flip this over to my demo environment, so this is what we call the Rubrik Security Cloud. This is where we manage everything. So Rubrik has the ability to back up AWS, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. So we cover all the major public cloud environments. We have multiple SaaS options like Jira, like M365, like Entra ID, like Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, all fully covered under the one interface. And then we have your traditional data center, like full Active Directory integration with full forest recovery, your databases, all your weird and wonderful databases there, all the hypervisors, NAS, unstructured data, file sets, all of that's covered under our Rubrik Security Cloud, and you have a one-stop shop to do it. But that's not really where the leading analysts view Rubrik as a leader in this space, the leader in the assume breach, the leader in getting you back up and running in hours. And that is really in the right-hand side of the screen. This is the part where we're going to go through the data threat analytics, data security posture, and orchestrated recovery. So first thing we're going to start with is data threat analytics. And this is Rubrik's ability that whenever we do a backup, be it if it's in the AWS cloud, on-premise, or in the other cloud platforms, or in M365, we are going to automatically, from a first point, scan the backup for 1.5 million known indicators of compromise. So we're taking this feed from multiple different sources. So we have multiple file hashes, YAYA rules. So every time we back up a virtual machine, we're going to scan it for known strains of ransomware and malware. We're also going to scan the backup for things like the tools that the bad actors use to do those, let them do those elevated privileges. All these can be done. The different intelligent threats that we do, we have, Rubrik has its own SOC team, its own security team. It has also something called Rubrik Zero Labs that do analysts on the data. We also partner with a company called Mandiant, which is our leading incident response team. So we're loading these up. We also let you bring your own Intel feed. So if you wanted to add any Intel source, you can add your own YAYA rule, your own file hash into Rubrik so that it starts to scan. Case in point for this, why this is really important, if you have an alert from some form of incident response team or some form of SOC team to say, we have found a compromised, a file hash that you need to go out and do a threat hunt, Rubrik will let you do that on the backup data and not on the production data. And it's the easiest, it's just entering in that file hash, clicking save, and that means that we will then go and start looking for that new Intel source or that new indicator of compromise throughout your backups that arrive onto Rubrik. And that's our proactive monitoring. That's the ability to proactively onto the environment. You can see here we've got some threats that have ran. So if I go back to the past 30 days, I can see it'll tell me exactly which machine the malware is located on. It will tell me the exact location of where it's on a file share on this link here. It will tell me the file hash, and it will tell me the threat actor family that it's coming from. More importantly though, it will let me quarantine the malware so that when I do go to recover, I'm not recovering the malware back into the environment, guaranteeing that your risk of reinfection has been limited. Now, we're not as naive to say at Rubrik to say, well, we know all the strains of malware, we know all the YAYA rules, we know all the indicators of compromise. We know that bad actors, be it cyber criminals or state-sponsored, will come out with new strains that nobody's ever seen before. So we have to guard against that as well. And that's why we have Rubrik's, what we call turbo threat hunt. So not only when the backups come onto the Rubrik system, the Rubrik Security Cloud, not only are we proactively scanning, we're also pre-hashing all your files and storing them in a database, meaning that if we see a 0-day ransomware strand that nobody's seen before, and we do some intel into that, we can then quickly start what we call a turbo threat hunt that is going to search through all your backups and all your snapshots in lightning quick time. Remember how I said it takes roundabout to do one virtual machine, round about 8 hours to do that scan? You can see here, we have started a scan off today. We scanned through nearly 862 objects, an object being either a virtual machine or a OneDrive box or some form of workload. And we scanned through nearly 19,000 snapshots, and we did that in 28 seconds. And we found out which machines, as you can see here, we've got some actually in the cloud, which machines or which subscriptions have the malware. And again, we'll tell you exactly where that malware is, the family, but allow you to click on the quarantine. So when you go to quarantine, again, when you go to do your cyber recovery, you will not be at risk of reinfection. And that is our threat hunting. That's after the fact from the proactive threat hunting. And then the final thing in our data threat analytics is to show you is Rubrik has, through the capabilities of machine learning and AI tools, to start learning about your data and start learning about what's happening. We also, whenever the backups come on, we are scanning for mass encryption events so that we can see what data, what files and folders have suspicious encryption around them, giving you your blast radius of your event. It looks for encryption events, but it also looks for mass deletions. But it takes round about 7 backups to say if you have, for instance, a database administrator doing a database dump and then deleting it the next day. Rubrik would see that as suspicious, but after 7 days, after it's learned that this is a normal pattern, it would then allow you the safe hit from in there. But the blast radius here basically tells you, okay, well, it tells you 2 things: how bad a situation you are in, which machines are at risk and have been at risk from this mass encryption event. But probably more importantly than that, if I go back to this this machine, you can see here that on this machine, I also have the ability to see if there's sensitive data on that machine. Now, Rubrik is not a DLP solution, certainly won't stop bad actors doing that, but it takes the guesswork out of what data the bad actors had access to. And I'll go into that in just a second. You'll also see here, we're also the only organization out there that scans at the hypervisor level and can pick up mass encryption events at that hypervisor level as well. And that is our data threat analytics. Now, the next thing to go into is what we call data security posture. And this is Rubrik's ability to load up policies into your solution to say, okay, what data do I want to be notified? And we have multiple different data types like IBAN numbers, credit cards, tax numbers, passport, credit cards. We can even search for passwords. All that data that's going to cause maximum reputational damage and potential fines from regulators. And we can proactively, as we're doing a backup across all our different workloads, be it M365, be it AWS, be it traditional on-prem, we can even scan inside a database to see if you have any tables that have credit cards in clear text form that have not been masked. And this, again, is a proactive tool to give you a 360-degree view of all your data, where it is, and what sensitive data is risk at exposure. So not only will we tell you where the sensitive data is, we will also tell you who has access to it. So that tells you 2 things. If you've got data on a traditional on-premise virtual machine, or maybe it's on a file share and it's got open access to everybody on the network, that means that if a bad actor gets on, he'll certainly would get access to that sensitive data. So proactive tool that tell me whenever we sell this and whenever we implement this in any environment, we always pick up sensitive data. OneDrive's the biggest number one hitter for where we pick up sensitive data, because we as human beings, we do all these things, we do all these trainings, and we understand data, where it should live, where it should be. Humans do things for ease, and they're not meant to be putting organizations at risk. We just do. This just gives you a bird's eye view into where the data is and who has access to it. So you can proactively put DLP solutions around it, label the data, maybe give somebody the best training they've ever had about where not to store data, but it gives you that visibility across your network in peacetime, so you can resolve and limit your data exposure, but also takes the guesswork. If you do suffer a cyber attack, it takes the guesswork. Did the bad actors get access to that data? What data is it? Can we get ahead of the game? Can we do press releases? Can we notify people? All that stuff becomes very valuable in those dark hours of that first cyber attack. And that's our data security posture. The next one to look at would be orchestrated application recovery. And this is basically pre-building runbooks across, we do it across VMware, we do it across Nutanix, we do it across Azure VMs, EC2 VMs. So take this as like, I'm going to pre-build a cyber recovery plan. So I'm going to call this Andy's cyber recovery. And you can build as many of these as you like. And I'm going to select the cluster that I want to build it. So you select which virtual machine. So this might be like an application stack that you want to do. So I can select the virtual machines that make up my application, select the ones that I want to be included in this. And remember, you can have multiple of these. Select the priority of which machine gets spun up in which order, because sometimes we know if an application spins up and this service isn't running, we know that it's going to fail the application connecting those application workloads together. So you can prioritize how the virtual machines are recovered. You can even put pauses in between how they come online in there. You can then select, we're obviously in VMware, you select which data center you're going back to, which cluster that you're going back to, and obviously which data store that you want to go back to as well. You can select which network. Do I want to preserve the entire network, the MAC address, or do I want them connected to a completely different network if we fail over? Or do I want the network to be recovered in a disconnected fact? So you can quickly and quite easily do this. I'm going to want them to go into my test network, and here I can even run some P and Pro scripts, some pre and pro scripts to check or make sure something's running before something else is spun up. And then I can go and create that cyber recovery plan. So in the event of a cyber attack, I have these pre-built. I've done my investigation. I've seen my blast radius. I know what I need to recover. I've checked what sensitive data is risk of exposure. But I've also done my threat hunting and quarantined all the malware. And now all I need to do is click on the button and click on recover. And that application will be recovered in the order that you specified with the correct parameters in there. But not only can you do that, you can actually then schedule a test recovery plan that can be spun up weekly, can be spun up monthly. Now, the test recovery schedule one, you don't want to be going back into production network because you'll have IP conflicts and kick production machines off the network. So you can have the live mount function here, which uses Rubrik's data store with no network connectivity. Click on next and say, right, I want to schedule this, and then I want to notify XYZ of people of the actual recovery. And that means that you can then see what the recovery looks like. Now, in here, the better or the more often you test, the better it is, because you do want to know if something's failing to recover. Have I got the recovery order incorrect? I need to investigate it in peacetime. But it also helps with things like audits, cyber insurance, board level reports, all these things to say, okay, this revenue generating app made up of XYZ. When did we last test the recovery of it? When did we last do a DR test or a cyber recovery test? And you can say, last week, here's the report, download the report, and you look like a hero because you've got this all automated in peacetime. That gives you the peace of mind that in the event of that cyber attack, you have the ability to recover. And that is the Rubrik cyber tools. Now, a couple of things I'm just going to show before we put it over to question and answers. So again, you'll be coming from the security team, and you're like, oh, another tool to manage, another place to go where it can see alerts. Rubrik fully integrates with all your SIEM and SOAR tools. We've got an integration for pretty much everything in there, so you can have those alerts being fed into the alerting tools in there. You can select webhooks so that you can have them going into Sentinel, ServiceNow, CrowdStrike, Splunk, every sort of integration at all, so that you're not having to reintroduce another tool that you have to go and do. Rubrik can feed into these tools very, very easily. And then we can also do clever things with the access to Rubrik. So you can do things like users. You can have local or SSO, single sign-on users. We integrate with all the major single sign-ons. We have things like role-based access accounts, so that you can minimize who has access to what in Rubrik. So for instance, if I wanted to, I'll take databases, because we might have a DBA that you want to give access to, but I only want them to have access to specific databases in my environment. And I only want them to be able to do certain recoveries in there. So I can only want them to recover to specific database hosts. And I don't want them to be able to do anything like download the files or export them. All I want them to be able to do is mount the snapshot. That would be live mount, or restore over original. And that really brings down to the least privilege access that you can dictate from your users, so that when they have access to Rubrik, you're really minimizing what they can actually do. And then you have obviously your security settings, like things like IP allow list. Which IP ranges am I going to allow to access Rubrik from? You've got multi-factor authentication that is enforced, certificate management, encryption management, things like account lockout. If you have X amount of failed account logins, log them out for X amount of time, session management, policy management, and then that retention lock that I talked about that enables you to make sure no data will ever be removed from the Rubrik environment, no matter where it is, be it cloud, SaaS, or on-premise. And that gives you your full cyber resiliency and the ability to answer those 5 questions. Is my data immutable? Yes, it's immutable through a layered approach, not just one thing. Can I find my blast radius of my attack? Of course you can with the data threat analytics and anomaly detection. So how do I know what sensitive data was exposed in that cyber attack? And that is done through our data security posture. And the big one that takes the time to get back up and running in the event of a cyber attack is, can I find my clean recovery point in a matter of hours to be able to recover without the risk of reinfection? And Rubrik answers all those questions that we need to achieve true cyber resilience for that assumed breach issues that we do face now. And I think I have stopped sharing now, and I'll pass it over for any other questions.
Amazing, Andy. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And I think setting out those 5 questions is really helpful when you approach this topic of where to start. So first of all, I want to open the floor to any questions. And while I give you all a moment to think on some, I do have some questions for you myself, Andy. So
Yes.
You have been involved, more than 30 ransomware recoveries, and you've obviously been in the industry for a while. what are the like common mistakes that you have seen people make when it comes to backup recovery then? How can we avoid them?
Yeah, so it's having that tick box exercise. The biggest mistake is assuming that you do have immutable backups, assuming that you are your backups are protected, be it you've maybe invested in a secondary storage option. And the other one is that your backups aren't local to where you need to recover them to. So if you're in a cyber attack and you've got a VMware estate or Nutanix estate on an on-premise data center, and your immutability is maybe in an Azure Blob store or a Wasabi, and it's all up there and it will survive the attack, but you've got to get that data back from the cloud provider into your data center, then start the recovery process, and it just extends your ability to recover by hours. And then it's things, when we first started seeing ransomware attacks like very regularly in 2017, we were just learning all the time. We didn't know how to solve them. And Rubrik's kind of roadmap has actually followed that process where we came out with immutable backups, then we came out with anomaly detection, and then we said, well, right, we need to still find a way of scanning, and we come up with the manual threat hunting first, then we come up with the turbo threat hunt. So it's always evolving and always learning, because these bad actors are very clever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that gives a nice segue to my other question for you, which is we see the word everywhere, AI. How has the industry and the way we do backups changed with AI coming into effect?
Yes, you need to be very careful, and it's probably the biggest thing we've seen, and it goes back to this data security posture, is you're now deploying AI agents that might have access to your sensitive data. Now, this is not even talking about AI launching cyber attacks, which we're seeing now with mass cyber attacks one by one through AI engines, but the sensitive data and making sure that your AI agents don't have access to this data and don't then give access to other people to this data, because that data is really what the bad actors are after. The mass encryption events, they love launching these as well, but that sensitive data is what all bad actors are after. And if the AI agents have access to it, then it really does cause issues. So if you've got any co-pilot projects going on, Rubrik does have a nice solution that I've not showed today that builds into that whole how do we guard against AI in the world today.
That is very important to be aware of, though, and thank you so much for raising that. I think one of the other questions that I have, and if anyone does have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box, is, if there's one thing that you want everyone here to take away, what would that be?
Assume that you're going to get breached. Everybody, be it from the biggest security vendors out there, be it from whatever you're doing, large or small, just assume and have a cyber recovery plan. Talk about it at team levels. Do desktop exercises. Like, just have a plan on, if that day happens, how do I respond? And that is the biggest advice, is if you're not thinking about it and you're suddenly launched into this, it is heartbreaking and stressful. So just bring it up in team meetings and talk about, how do we recover in the event of a cyber attack? What are the steps we need to take? And then be open and honest with yourselves and your team members, and build a cyber recovery strategy.
That's really good advice. And how often would you recommend updating these strategies or doing them and practicing them? Is it something that should be done regularly? What would you say is the best answer to that?
Yeah, it's all time. I mean, the best answer would be at least do it once a month, but I would probably aim to be doing it at least biannually, so
Okay.
twice a year. But it's trying to get everybody in the room, that would be the business application owners, the network storage, the identity. It's trying to get everybody in that room in the one go, but definitely bring it up at board level, saying, look, have we tested for this? How secure are we? Do we know we can recover? We need to go into this assuming that are breached. What's our plan? And have a plan.
That's really key advice. I think it's definitely a conversation that is being happened more at board level now, with the risk being so apparent in the news all the time now about cyber attacks. People are very aware of it being an issue and the importance of it being really drilled into an organization. So unless anyone has any more any questions, we'll wrap up. If you do think of a question after this webinar, like I said, please do feel free to email me and I can get in touch with Andy, who has shared so much great advice today. If you could all take a moment, please, there will be a poll that will pop up on your screen. And if you could take a moment to submit that answer to help us gauge feedback on this session and improve it. I want to say a massive thank you to Andy and Adam for joining us today from Rubrik and sharing some really good insights. So thank you both for your time and thank you everyone for attending today. I hope you gained something useful.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye.